Hey guys, just want to take a second to thank our sponsor, Carnivore Bar. I don't promote many products because honestly, all you need to be healthy is just eat meat, and that's what you should do. But if you're hiking or road tripping or stuck at work and you want something nutritious that is just meat, fat, and possibly salt if you want it, the Carnivore Bar is a great option. I like this product not only because it is pure meat, but also because I really want the carnivore market to thrive as well. The more we support meat only products, the more people will make meat only products, and this will bring this into the mainstream. So if this sounds like something you'd like to check out, then take a look and use my discount code HTC to get 10% off, which also applies to subscriptions, giving you 25% off total. All right. Thanks, guys.
Hey, everybody, back with another episode of the How to Carnivore podcast. We've got Anthony Chafee here, the plant-free MD, and also John Jaquish, Dr. John Jaquish, who has a PhD and is the inventor of OsteoStrong and the X3 bar. So it's time to talk working out, carnivore, getting jacked as you get older, and all those good things. So welcome, Anthony, and welcome, John.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Yeah. Good to see you, man. It was, it's been a while since we spoke last time, but I definitely wanted to talk to you more about, just the X3 bar and just exercise fitness in general. Last time we spoke, a lot of people got quite a lot out of that, and a lot of people have been asking for an encore. So I appreciate you making some time to come back on.
100%. And we'll do it a third time if people still have more questions.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So fire John, away.
Yeah. All right, well, let's get into it, talking about the X3 bar. So Anthony's been using it for a little while now and is doing the 30-day challenge. John, how did this come about, and what's the purpose of the X3 bar versus just going to the gym?
So I had been going to the gym for 20 years, and I really didn't get much out of it.
You didn't get much out of it, so you weren't in good shape, or?
I mean, I was lean for a little while, but that had less to do with the gym and more to do with my diet. And I played rugby in university, so that keeps you lean.
Yeah,
like sprinting and stopping. Like you don't see a lot of fat rugby players. So I was, how do I say it without totally trashing weightlifting? I mean, I guess I was sore on a regular basis. I really didn't gain a lot of muscle. When I was playing for a semi-pro team, I had some testicular damage. So then I got a prescription for testosterone replacement therapy. And so this was at 27 years old. And then I was like, I don't really need rugby in my life anymore. I'm a much better fan anyway. Like, I'm pretty sure, like, Anthony, you went like All-American, right?
Yeah,
not me. Yeah, I was just, I was there for, like, my university experience was much more about, I guess it was about academics. I did pretty well. And then I liked my fraternity, and rugby was just something that was like, I'm tough, I can do this, but I wasn't planning on like a future in rugby. So like last talk we had, Anthony was going on and on about all the stuff he did in rugby, and I'm identifying with like the first story and then the second story.
and then I'm playing for America.
It's like, bro, like you lost me. So So it was certainly a fun experience, and I love the game. But I was way more interested in keeping my teeth and my face intact than I was winning games. And at a low level, you'll do fine in rugby with that attitude. At a high level, you'll do awful because the other guys, and also coincidentally, after I graduated, I did some research on different bone density and bone structure of different races of people. Who's best at rugby? So like New Zealanders, Islanders, the gauge of bone, like if I grab onto my radius bone right here, just pinch it, it's maybe 2 centimeters thick. You'd find a guy that was smaller than me on the field, shorter than me. He would have thinner bones, you'd think. But if he was from Tonga or Samoa, It was like the dude had rebar in his arms. It was like, you grab on his wrist and I'd be like, let me see that for a second. And I remember thinking, I'm writing a paper about this. And I did. It was an interesting, like, different races of people are just designed for high impact collisions, and others are not. So, like white dudes, really not. But if you got some Islander in you, then you're good. So that was part of my reason. But then when I got out of school, and to answer your question, my mother was diagnosed with osteoporosis. And so and this is where OsteoStrong came from. I looked at how I could treat her bone loss. She didn't want to take any of the drugs that were out there, and I didn't blame her. I read some of the side effects, and I was like, God, like, the side effects are worse than having osteoporosis, which we see all the time with different side effects and medications. And also, as I got into research, I met a lot of researchers that told me, there's no such thing as a side effect. Drugs have effects. Some you want and some you don't.
Yeah.
And it's like, just understand that, and you will do so much better in writing about pharmaceuticals versus physical medicine. Because like, I could see where like I was trying to go. I was trying to say, what if we could come up with a physical medicine solution? Something where we could make the human body do something, and we could create an environment where the bone density had to go up instead of down. So sedentary lifestyle, bone density is going down. How do we get enough force through the bone so that we trigger it to grow, and not just maintain, like grow, like go back to where it was when you were 30 years old, which is when peak bone mass is. So I built a series of devices that are now found in OsteoStrong locations, and they put compressive force on bone to emulate high impact forces. So not high impact, but the emulation of high impact to manifest those growth differences, that we see in younger years of life. So I did that. And then just through some of my connections, the first real clinical trial was at the University of East London. And they were using a nearby hospital facility to do patient recruitment and do the therapy at. And so as they were doing this, some of the physicians at the hospital who had osteopenia, which is like pre-osteoporosis and osteoporosis, were like, well, we can't be test subjects because we're not blinded, but we just want to use the device. Like, is there any reason we shouldn't? No, go ahead. It's very safe. And so they used it, and they noticed, they took DEXA scans and they showed bone growth. And they were thrilled because this was a problem that was bothering them, and they didn't want to take the medications either. I find it interesting when I talk to a lot of physicians about prescribing certain medications, and then I ask, well, would you take this? Different answer.
Yeah.
Like, they'll prescribe something frequently, and it's like, would you take this? Well, I might look into nutritional solutions first. It's like, well, you don't say that to your patients. So, and I get the same argument every time. Yeah, compliance. I tell patients to work out. They don't. I tell them to stop eating Twinkies. They don't. I tell them to stop drinking 2 bottles of wine a day, and they don't. So it's tough. Okay. I'll give them that. Like a pill, like, unless the pill gives them like immediate acid reflux or something awful happens right away, they might stick with that. So why is it always a medication? Well, that's part of the reason. So they used this device, and they got results that they never expected to get, even from some stronger courses of drugs that they would never take. And so they were thrilled. And when that clinical trial was coming to conclusion, and I wasn't writing it up, I was just there to make sure they were using the device correctly, because you want to make sure they don't use it wrong and then get a bad result, and then it's like the data is worthless.
Yeah.
So say it again.
No, I was agreeing with you. You need to make sure they're actually have the proper technique.
So some of the physicians were saying, I can't believe the forces that are going through my body. It's like 6, 7, 8, 9 times my body weight. And I remember the one who had the highest loading compared to her body weight. She was a 90-pound woman, and she was putting 9 times her body weight through her hip joint. And she's like, that's like, I looked up, like, strongest people in the world can't lift that. And I'm like, well, okay, you're not lifting it. You're compressing your bone mass, specifically in the hip joint, to get that loading. But it's a very interesting point, because in weightlifting, like if like really once you look at that research and then compare it to regular weightlifting, and I did that, I did a comparison of the NAINS database and what people on average lift. And for those that don't know what the NAINS database is, it's the largest health database in the world. They add about 2,000 people per year and have been doing so for maybe 12 years now. And it's a whole battery of tests. There's strength testing, there's body composition testing, there's blood work, like pretty much every conveniently gathered and some inconveniently gathered health metrics are all put together on different individuals. And with that much data, you can look at certain people and draw some conclusions. Maybe.
Is it,
or
and it's like a
random
random sample of people, a random sample of population. Yeah, wow.
Right, but then once you get the random sample, then you can parse it out to like marginally athletic people, highly athletic people, and then you start to understand maybe athletic populations. It turns out like some of the most athletic people that are in the NAINS database work out 2 or 3 times a week.
Right, okay,
Now,
not every day.
Shocked. Like, really? Like I would expect people to be working out a little more than that. But we do live, well, I live in the United States, and 75% of men in the United States are overweight or obese. So you got to consider what the norm is. Like, what's the average? If the average is, overweight or obese, well, then the fit people in the NAINS database may not be so fit. But for the purposes of what I was looking into, it was like, what sort of weights are people dealing with when exercising the lower extremities versus how we compress the hip joint in the OsteoStrong medical devices. So looking at the capacity, by the way, in OsteoStrong, all the force is self-created. So force doesn't come on you. You create the force, and you're looking at a computer readout of what your body's capable of. So think about it. This is for safety reasons. Like, can I break my own finger by squeezing a fist?
No.
Can't do it. No, you can't. Because of neural inhibition. It's sort of like it takes more force to bite through a carrot than it does through your own finger, but you can't bite through your finger. Because your own neural inhibitory process will stop you from doing that. Like, it just won't let your jaw muscle contract enough to actually, cause you to go right through a bone. So, looking at that whole solution, I realized people are 7 times stronger in a stronger range of motion, like right here, than they are in their weaker range of motion. So now knowing that, I thought, wow, like weightlifting is a terrible approach to stimulating muscular growth, because we are so powerful, yet we don't know it. Because every time you go to lift weights, you pick the weight you can handle in the weakest range of motion. But you're actually 7 times more capable. So what you need is a weight that's changing as you're moving it from strong to weaker range. And it's got to be relevant in every range. So then I thought, okay, I'll write a book about band training, because that seems to have never taken off. And keep in mind, this was probably like 7 or 8 years ago, way before I launched X3. And so I bought a couple of the heavier bands I could find, because most of the bands out there are like 5 pounds. It's not relevant for strength. Great for rehab, not relevant for strength. So I found some 50, 100-pound bands, and immediately it was like every joint in my body hurt, because you can't, when you grab a hold of a band, it wants to be a circle. Well, the human body doesn't interface with circles so well. We interface with flat ground and straight bars real well. And that's been known, and that's what fitness is based on. But at the same time, you need those surfaces and those grips to be able to fully engage the body. So I thought, okay, I got to develop a product. Now it's not about writing a book, though I did write the book anyway. So it was like, we need something to keep the wrist neutral and the ankles neutral. And if we do that, we can load the body far beyond what weightlifting can ever do in the appropriate ranges of motion and trigger growth much faster. And that was the birth of X3. And I did write the book, Weightlifting is a Waste of Time. It's a Wall Street Journal bestseller.
Great
People are very
title.
upset about the title.
Yeah.
Most people who complain about the title never read the book. Shocking, I know.
Yeah.
So, it's we don't really, like, the company doesn't target people in the fitness industry per se. We're much more interested in sort of the busy professional who can maybe read some science and understand it, but fitness people cannot understand science. It's not that they won't try. They are not capable. They're not smart. Look, the two biggest fitness information outlets on the internet are YouTube and Instagram, videos and pictures.
Yeah.
It's like we're in preschool.
Right? You got to turn the whole book into a video of short Instagram reels.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and they can just flick past the parts they think they understand but don't.
Yeah.
I don't know what the actual answer is. It's okay because I'm getting to the market that I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just absolutely blown away. When I bump into these fitness people, all kinds of swear words, which usually would hit a filter, but they misspell even the swear words.
So they get through.
Yeah, they can't even get their profanity right.
Yeah.
So,
So John, who's it really working for? Is it like older people who have osteoporosis, or busy professionals?
Well, OsteoStrong, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
For X3, it's really just the busy professional. It's the guy who tried lifting weights, didn't get anything out of it, which, by the way, is like 99.9% of the population. Like, how many people do you two know? I already got this answer from Anthony, but could you create a list of 10 people that that have been working out for more than 2 years who look absolutely no different whatsoever from the day they started? Yeah, you could. Everybody could.
Very common.
Because that's almost everyone who is involved in fitness. Nothing changes. If you're fat, you're still fat. If you're skinny, you're still skinny. Yeah. It's not working. And I got some explanations for that. The biggest genetic difference is tendon layout. So, if I look at my tendon, like my pectoral, so the origin is here, and then it attaches right, here. That's where it's supposed to attach. Right here, sort of comes underneath the bicep and attaches on the humerus. So its job is to draw the humerus in towards the midline of my body. But some people, maybe 1/10 of 1%, have it over here or anywhere else along that humerus bone. Well, the further away from the origin you have it, and there's maybe 6 or 7 different studies on this, further away you have it, the longer lever you have in your body. So if you have a lever in your body, you have a massive advantage. Mm-hmm. And this is why most people lift weights and get nothing out of it. And then all of a sudden there's one guy who seems to grow bigger every time the guy shows up at the gym. I went to high school with a guy like that. His name was Mark. It was like we started working out at the same time. We were about the same size. The guy put on like 40 pounds in a summer.
Yeah.
And, I think I put on 1.
Yeah, I know people who've done that. I'm got a feeling.
Yeah,
I've done
and
that
I'm just looking at him like, "What are you doing?" And he goes, "I don't know. The only difference between what you're doing and what I'm doing is I smoke cigarettes." And I'm like, "Yeah, I don't."
It's got to be the cigarettes.
Yeah. So, the guy just couldn't stop growing incredible musculature. Yeah. And he ended up being just an excellent athlete. But that's the genetic born NFL player kind of genetics. But when you train with variable resistance, you get that leverage. Like, you're actually nullifying the advantage that most people have in getting the advantage or getting the advantage yourself, depending on how you want to look at it. But the lever arm makes no difference. And like really tall people, like look at the NBA. A lot of those guys, like, they're in shape, they're lean, but they're pretty thin. Not a lot of guys can put on a lot of muscle. Now they can, because now it's still harder to see on an NBA player when you're 6'7".
Yeah, it's stretched out so much.
Yeah, exactly. Like a short guy puts on 20 pounds of muscle, and everybody's like, "Whoa!" Like,
It's
totally
this
different.
ball of muscle.
Yeah, an NBA player puts on 40 pounds of muscle, and nobody notices.
Yeah.
So, but still, they can grow some musculature because now their disadvantages are gone, and they can grow muscle like the NFL player now.
Yeah.
Can you, John, can you dig into that a bit more? Because I'm taller and quite lean. So because is it that they can get into that kind of sweet spot of maximum tension and force faster with the X3 bar, or why is it that it's easier now for tall people to build muscle?
It's the middle part that you don't get stuck on. It's the getting stuck right here.
Right. Okay.
Which we talk about that as like sticking point, but really it's just kind of a lack of leverage, lack of access to the muscle. Because when somebody helps you past that point, you can do lockouts or something with a weight that's much higher than you would otherwise be able to handle in full range.
Yeah, because we've probably all seen the short muscular guy who can bench a heap. They put 150 kilos on the bar, and it's because they're only moving the bar about this far.
That's right. Right, and their elbow is still closer.
Yeah.
Inside, so they don't have the mechanical disadvantage that a taller guy would. But with X3, none of that makes a difference.
Yeah, and it also you see even in weightlifting, trying to accommodate for that exact phenomenon. You have like the heavy chains that put on the side of like a bench bar. So whereas like as you're going up, it's pulling up more chains off the ground, which would just add weight to it. It's the exact same concept, except it's not adding nearly as much weight as like the X3 bar can. I mean, it's adding sort of like 5 pounds per link, but obviously there's a limit on how many of those links.
Right. On there. Yeah. If you're 11 feet tall, maybe you can get some good variance in there, but if you're not, then probably not.
Yeah.
That was sort of the other thing that when I looked at, this is the advantage that I had that no one else who designed a piece of equipment ever had the advantage of having, which was the bone density research. So nobody really knew what the maximum capability of people were in their most optimized range of motion. It was always seen as a place where you absorb force. Mm-hmm. So you can absorb, like gymnasts absorb 10 times their body weight upon landing from the uneven bars. That's the biggest drop they have. So 10 times their body weight. You know anybody that squats 10 times their body weight?
Oh,
no, neither does anyone else. Yeah. So like way higher loading capability we have. Yeah. So how do we access that from an exercise science standpoint? Like, how do we get the benefit of the landing that the gymnast has without having to actually become a gymnast? Because there's all sorts of reasons why we can't all go do that. So, I mean, if you're like over 5'8", you can't do that, right? Mm-hmm. Anthony would never. If we put him on the uneven bars, he would just like whack his feet the bar. Like seriously, like you can't fit. Yeah. So how do we get that proper loading? And I realized that the ratio of force was really the critical issue, because there have been some studies that showed variable resistance was great, but they'd be holding X at the bottom and maybe 1.2X at the top, where you really want X at the bottom and maybe 4 or 5 or 6X here. Mm-hmm. So it's got to be in. Coincidentally, after I started, somebody came out with a study. I can't remember the author, but it's in the book. And they showed that the greater the ratio of variance, the more muscular growth there is in a shorter period of time. So, and X3 was like even a more aggressive ratio than they were using in that study. But I think that study might have been designed sort of around like, hey, this X3 idea, we're either going to prove it or disprove it, because that's how science works. You don't start out trying to prove something works. You want to find out, you want to create a test that'll show if it works or not, and potentially why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, or potentially trying to disprove it. That's like a properly designed study is like, okay, this is our assertion that this works. Okay, let's try and disprove it. Because you're at a much stronger position there. Because you're looking for ways to test it and look for chinks in the armor. And if you
what nuances of the study the previous studies would have made this work, even if it wasn't what it was. So like let's eliminate even more variables that people didn't think of in the first trial. So and with variable resistance, there's 16 well-written studies, and 16 out of 16 show you grow muscle faster. And I would say, like, there was a study in the very beginning, one of the first ones I cited, that showed that people were getting stronger at the triple the rate, which is why I called the thing X3. It's funny, like, we tested that with a bunch of audiences and people just didn't believe it. And so I went to the strap line of the product is now greater force, greater gains, which is nobody argues with. And they grow muscle very fast still, but the idea that it was triple the speed, two things I didn't like about it. One is people found that so hard to believe, though it was true in the study. But also, I would say it's more than triple, because most people who lift weights, they get 0. It's like, what's your progress after a year? 0. Or what's your progress after 2 years? 0. So, yeah, I mean, it's harsh to say. And I called the book Weightlifting is Waste of Time for a reason. And I call out all sorts of statistics about how unfit Americans are, even the ones that go to the gym all the time, because the people that you see at most gyms and the people that you see at the Pizza Hut, are they any different? No. I mean, maybe if you go to Gold's Gym in Venice, California.
That's different. Yeah.
It's totally different, though. That's like, like half the members there are professional athletes.
And also, the people going to Pizza Hut are often the same guys going to the gym, because they go to the gym and go, I earned this pizza, and they eat something wretched for their body. And and they're really, really fighting against themselves.
I earned this pizza.
Even putting in
replace pizza with heroin and say that same sentence. Like, it's just, not that pizza is as damaging as heroin, but like, stop justifying things to yourself.
Yeah.
When you want something that is bad for you, like, just play different scenarios. Like, boy, I had a really hard day, so I should be allowed to cheat on my wife today.
Yeah.
Ask her. I don't think she will agree. So, like, it's like one of these.
I've earned this.
How bad.
I've earned these hookers.
I've been in the gym all day.
I played with the kids. I bought my wife flowers. I earned this hooker.
Yeah. Right. Like, no one would say no. I'm sure there's some guy out there that probably has said that.
Probably does think that.
Yeah. But it's like, nobody would say that about anything other than food. And this is where we were talking earlier, and I was just about to say, like, for some reason, society, like, if I see somebody who smokes and I see them just lighting, their next cigarette with the burning butt of the last one, I can say to that guy, like, this is a bad path. Like, you like those too much. Like, get that out of your life. And if I say it and not be a smart ass about it, even a random person will be like, yeah, you're right. Maybe he'll listen. Maybe it won't be me. Maybe it'll be the next guy, or maybe it'll be his uncle who dies of lung cancer, and then he goes, oh fuck, I gotta quit doing this. But try walking up to somebody and telling them they eat too much.
Yeah.
Like, it's a random person.
It's not going to go down well.
Just think about the conversation. I couldn't help but notice you're overweight. You should probably, like, make some better nutrition choices. Can I help you? They will, like,
lose their mind. Yeah.
They'll lose their mind. And that's just the situation that we're in. Telling them you shouldn't be eating that. Like, I went to a Super Bowl party this year, and the food was all just junk food. And so I went and I had a couple pounds of ground beef, And then I went to the party, and they noticed I wasn't eating anything, and I'm like, well, you're not serving anything that's food. All this stuff is edible.
Straight
And
faced.
I actually, in my own way, I thought that was like the nicest thing to say. It wasn't. Yeah, they were like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, I would never put any of this in my body.
Yeah.
By the way, you shouldn't either. And it's like, I like ruin this event. I'm like, I'm just gonna go, guys. I can just finish this game at home. Yeah, it's okay. Nobody wanted me there at that point anyway.
Yeah, like I do talk about that as well. People.
Why is that such a problem?
Yeah.
It shouldn't be.
No, but
You should be able to say, like, we should hold ourselves to a higher standard, and not like, now I do, like, if I'm at a group dinner, especially if I'm paying the bill, the people are like, oh, let's get the cheese sticks, and let's get the Bavarian pretzel balls. And I'm like, yeah, let's just take the steak entree, and you have the chef just cut it up and give us a bunch of toothpicks.
Yeah.
Like I do that all the time. And any restaurant will be like, yeah, sure, we'll do that. And then the people are like, why did you do that? That's not even an appetizer on the menu.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I'm the customer. I get whatever I want.
Yeah.
And also, we're going to eat healthy. If you're going to be with me, that's the price you pay. Yeah.
Well, then, a lot of people do, use food in the same way that we use drugs, and people use, people who do use drugs, or they drink or smoke, whatever, maybe they'll do that on the weekend. Maybe they'll drink on the weekend, or do, a special event, they'll go to parties or whatever. And they, they know that it's bad for them. And they accept that it's bad for them and say, well, I know this is bad for me. However, I want this effect. I want to party. I want to have fun, or whatever. And I'll take the hangover. I'll take the healthy. I mean, they don't realize just how much it's hurting their body, but they at least recognize that concept, and they're willing to make that trade-off. But with food, they can also do that as well, but they don't realize it's as bad as it is. And it's like, oh, I'll have some pizza. Oh, it's not really the best for me, but I like it. And so we have that same sort of relationship with food, and even think about it in the same way. And then you tell a junkie,
keep talking, I'm not going away.
Yeah, you tell a junkie, it's just like, hey, you should probably cut down. A lot of them will get very offended as well. They get really pissed off because you're challenging their habit. And the thing is that they probably know already that
that's
this is bad for them, and now you're reminding them of this, and you're like, god damn it, I'm just trying to party. All right, I'm not trying to think about reality. And you do that with food as well, and people get really pissed off.
It's the socially acceptable addiction.
And
absolutely. Yeah And like every every birthday that comes around, out comes the birthday cake. And every sort of social get together, out comes the cakes and coffees and sweets and all that sort of thing. It's very cultural, isn't
it? And in some cultures, it's better than others. My mother's from Belgium, and I don't like this about Belgium, but I also do. So, I mean, they're always talking about the chocolates that come at the end of the meal, and they're always talking about the little cute pastries. And I mean, like, this shit just pisses me off, because I have 36 first cousins in Belgium.
Oh, Jesus.
Can you imagine how many pastries I get handed and I have to say no?
Yeah.
It's just like, come on, guys, you know what I do. You all follow me. Stop it. But the good news is, it's usually one piece of chocolate and one little pastry.
Yeah.
So there's something to be said about volume.
Yeah.
And that's not how Americans do it. Like, if you get a piece of cake, you get like a huge piece of cake, and you might have a second one. They don't do that. And then in a lot of Asian countries, being overweight is considered shameful to your family. Like, you're like gluttonous. So but they never talk about it. It's just like, when somebody gets fat, it's like, it's just like the old guys are like, no.
Like like the Asian nail places where, they have those like undercover cameras and things like that. If someone comes
Yeah.
in,
Oh yeah.
oh my
And you
God.
see the subtitles and it's like,
Yeah,
look at this
exactly.
fat lady. Right. Yeah.
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 They trash talk
Oh, yeah.
that. And I mean, I'm not saying bullying is positive, but I think it can be maybe a little, like a little bit of peer pressure could help
Yeah.
us all.
Well, certainly bullying and really going after someone and being horrible is
Well,
obviously,
that's negative. Yeah.
yeah, is very negative. But in psychology, we look at, keeping people in, in the range of norms. And, when someone's stepping outside of that, it actually is beneficial to the society for them to just go, hey, what the hell are you doing? That's not really what we do here. And, in social,
Especially
in
what we know
childhood
about health.
socializing.
It's unhealthy. It's
Yeah.
not. I mean, like what you see on the cover of Sports Illustrated now, they're like glorifying obesity. Like
Mm,
that's just the wrong move.
mm, yeah.
Like if you choose to, if I had to put, one over the other, like somebody likes smoking marijuana. Okay. So you're going to get dumber. There's quite a bit of research. Now, when you quit or when you take an extended break, a lot of brain activity comes back. But really the mechanism of THC is like limiting blood flow to the brain. That's why you uncontrollably laugh about stuff. It's like your brain isn't working.
Yeah.
You're like, I can't think of that name of that thing I need to eat. Oh yeah, fork. Give me a fork. I mean, that kind of thing. That's hilarious. But at the same time, it's because you've limited the blood flow to your brain.
Yeah.
But if somebody has a habit of that, the long-term effects aren't as damaging as if somebody's habit is, I just like to eat a box of candy bars every day.
No.
And that's the kind of thing that we need to be able to tell people no.
Yeah. It'd be nice that, when this gets more, mainstream. I think it is, people, because obviously, everyone has a different opinion on what's healthy eating. And that's very hard for people. And they say it's just like, like, who am I supposed to listen to? Everyone's making great arguments. I don't know what the hell to believe. But, we obviously, the three of us are all making our arguments for a carnivore diet or a carnivore based diet. And, and it's starting to get some traction, and people are now, being mouthpieces themselves and start talking about this.
Yeah,
and
they become healthier, and then they go tell everybody, right?
Yeah, that's it. And so, eventually we're going to be able to get them being, enough in the mainstream that they're able to sort of keep people into like that, in that social constriction, saying, hey, actually that's really not healthy. You should really put down that carrot. That's really going to screw you up. And actually have that make sense, because like, it sort of sounds insane. Like, put down a carrot, like, why would a carrot be bad for you?
A carrot was what I needed.
Yeah, exactly. And that's all.
And then we got to untrain a lot of people who think that, they eat carrots all day. That'd be the healthiest thing they could do. I love to eat carrots all day. No, you'd be like living on a toilet.
Yeah.
You'd probably give yourself diverticulitis.
Yeah.
The standard of care for diverticulitis still, I mean, there's been 10 years of research that shows the higher your fiber, the worse diverticulitis gets.
Yeah.
Yet the recommendation when you get diverticulitis is only fiber in your diet.
Yeah.
Like, don't eat meat, nothing, just fiber.
Yeah. Well, and
makes it worse.
And even more insane and counter to their own thinking is that, when you go to the hospital with this stuff and you have to have Tourette's test, you go on a low residue diet. So they even tell you, like the general surgeons will say, hey, no fiber, nothing like that. As soon as the infection is cleared, they say, now you better get on that high fiber diet. That's what's really going to protect you. It's like, are you insane? Like you literally had to stop them from eating fiber because that was making this thing worse. And now it's stopped, and you're telling them to do the exact thing that you told them was going to make it worse. Like that's just a level of insanity to me that just beggars imagination, because like you are countering yourself. You see the evidence in front of you. You're saying, yeah, don't do that. Oh, but now you really need to do that. Like, what in the hell are you talking about? But yeah, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that in the hospitals, unfortunately.
Every
Yeah.
day in the hospital system. Also, what's in the cafeteria of?
Mm.
Actually, I'm kind of curious. What's in the cafeteria
Awful.
in Australian hospitals?
Awful. It's just carbs and sugar.
Yeah,
And
it's just sugar, right?
that's it.
Same thing with them. Yeah, it's like, they got a little slice of apple cake or apple pie, and they got a couple of salad options and a couple of pieces of sliced fruit, and you're like, where's the barbecue?
Yeah.
Like,
like soda machines,
Oh yeah, they all have soda machines everywhere.
Yeah. And the patients are getting, just sugary carbs like that. That's it. It's a lot of bread with jam, fruit cups, fruit juice. That is 95% of what these people get. And
also,
like
fruit juice, like that court case ended a long time ago. Fruit juice is like right up there with like Coca-Cola.
Yeah. Well, and some of them,
brings fruit juice.
Yeah, and some of them even worse. There's certain fruit juices that have more grams of sugar per ounce than Coca-Cola. And it's just, oh, but it's good for you because it has vitamin C. I'm like, whoop-de-doo. You mix vitamin C in with your cocaine, you realize that this is good for you now. It's like, oh, I'm doing this for my health. It's just like, no, you're not. That's nonsense. And giving this to people in the hospital, that bothers me so much. And these people are sick, and like, and I mean, we've known since the 1930s that carbohydrates fuel cancer, and the cancer cells taking 400 times the amount of glucose as our other cells, from Otto Warburg, Nobel Prize winner in 1930, and yet we are feeding cancer patients the vast majority of their food.
Just sugar. Yeah.
What the hell are you doing?
I often I did not take a single oncology class. I've read a lot of cancer papers, so I would say I have a working knowledge. Somebody comes to me and they're like, hey, I've been diagnosed with it. I'm like, hey, not my field. However, I usually tell people when I hear somebody say cancer is always fueled by glucose. And so if you shut that down, like the cancer cells can't live. And so I hear that all the time from people who are just reading biohacking information or health books like yours or anybody's. And I say, you know what? It certainly depends on the type of cancer, and I've not read enough to say that unilaterally about all different types of cancer. It sure seems that that's the case, but I'd hate to be wrong on that subject. So I tell them, you're going to have to look elsewhere for a more definitive answer, because I just don't want to touch it. But it sounds like you've read a lot more about oncology than I have. Is that basically true? I mean, I also know that certain types of cancer are hormonal sensitive. Breast cancer, for example, it's estrogen sensitive. So the sugar is not the whole story, but could it be?
It's a major part. And, even though if things
is it the biggest part?
I think so. Yeah, absolutely. Because you can have different sensitivity. Sure. You can have an estrogen sensitive tumor, and maybe estrogen will stimulate it to grow.
Right. But a hormone is not fuel.
Exactly.
A hormone causes cell to divide.
Yeah. It's just giving you a signal. But if you don't have the fuel to grow, you're not going to grow. And so, you can have the estrogen, but if you're limiting the glucose and you're limiting the fuel supply, it's not going to be able to grow. And so that's a major bottleneck, and so, and all the ones that I know of, I haven't heard of any that don't follow that glucose pattern.
I haven't found that either. And I have looked for some, maybe there's a type of cancer that just likes fats or just likes proteins or what. No. They're all glucose fueled.
Some like glutamine as well, but not all of them. From my understanding, all of them, need this massive amounts of glucose, because they're they go into a fermentative state. They're not going through oxidative phosphorylation. So now they're having to ferment, and that requires massive amounts of glucose because it's not as efficient. You're not getting, the 36 ATP, you're getting like 2, and so you just need tons and tons and tons of this stuff. And so it's very, very glucose dependent.
Steve Jobs had pancreatic cancer.
Yeah.
And you know how he treated it? He self-treated it.
Fruit, right?
He became a fruitarian.
Oh my God.
All he ate was fruit.
Yeah.
And I don't know who gave him that advice, but like as soon as I heard that, it was like, that seems like the worst thing you could do.
Absolutely.
Like, I don't know.
Well, it's not giving his body the nutrition that it needs to function and fight this thing off properly. And you're giving the cancer jet fuel. I definitely would not recommend that to people. But unfortunately, he as an intelligent and accomplished man as Steve Jobs was, he's still caught into this, like people are like, what the hell do I eat? And he was,
Right.
he looked at this
Overwhelmed
and
with bad information. He had no idea how to make an informed decision because he had bad information. You can't make a good decision with bad information.
Yeah. And, that's part of it. That's some of the things that, like Thomas Sowell talks about when we're writing about intellectuals and things like that. They can be brilliant in their field and one of the most highly regarded experts in their field, but then they go outside of their field and they still have that mentality of I know everything and I'm so great at everything. And then they look at a little bit of information and they go, completely down the wrong path. But they have that confidence because they're normally right and they're normally the authority, forgetting that how many decades it took them to become an authority in their field. And if anyone else stepped into their field, just, shooting off at the hip, they would shut them down and be like, you don't know what you're talking about. And then they go into other fields and do the same thing. And unfortunately, they can get burned by that. I'm not saying that, Steve Jobs is going around, saying that he's an expert or anything like that, but you can end up looking at something and hearing something that sounds
about a month before he died, he said, I don't know how to treat pancreatic cancer, but I know what I did was the wrong thing.
Okay, right.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because they just kept, every time he went to the hospital, like, oh, it's getting worse and worse and worse.
Yeah. Well, at least he had some insight into that, and at least hopefully, other people hear that and take that to heart. Yeah, it's really sad. I don't know who convinced him that was the right thing to do.
I believe he was into it earlier in his life. So when he got sick, he might have gone back to it because he was sort of a kind of like in the sort of rebellious hippie movement in his early 20s. And then also very interested in technology and working in Silicon Valley. So that was kind of his setup. So yeah, when he got sick, perhaps he fell back on that way of eating, which is obviously disastrous for someone with cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Poor guy. Hopefully that's not something that gets any more people. But you do see in sort of the vegan influencers and the fruitarians and things like that. Oh, this is so good for cancer. This is so good for this or whatever. And people making these really outrageous claims, and you have to imagine that people are taking this up and really hurting themselves. And that's a big concern of mine. And one of the reasons I sort of got into this was because, people are really hurting themselves, by eating the wrong thing. It's not a little thing, it's not just like, oh, they're a bit overweight. They're very sick, and they're getting illnesses that they shouldn't have to have.
So like, how about the people that eat a primary carbohydrate diet and just white knuckle every day with their hunger and they don't get fat? So they think they're healthy just because they're not obese, but you're still a metabolic disaster.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And like I tell people, I had a fraternity brother say to me the other day, geez, I'm diabetic. And he's a slim guy. He says, I don't get it. And I said, well, you eat sugar. Well, no, I don't. I mean, like at night, I have like corn chips or, yeah, that's sugar.
Yeah.
Like just because it's not sweet doesn't mean it's the right thing to eat. Like and I have been arguing for a while that carbohydrates don't fit the definition of a macronutrient. You don't need them.
You don't. Yeah, you don't.
Well, then they're not a macronutrient, because a macronutrient is something you need to survive. You don't need it, then it's not a macronutrient. And hey, did you guys see my interview with Menno Henselmans?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I watched that just recently. That was the bodybuilder talking about you don't need carbs to build muscle. Is that right?
Right. Well, he's a scientist. He's been published all kinds of stuff. He has a great book called I think it's called The Mindset of Self-Control. So he did a systematic analysis of, I think it was 30 different studies on carbohydrates and performance. And there's a couple of like sentences in there, and he repeated them on the, I don't really have a podcast. I have a show, which I do like, I don't know, I say whenever I can, which I tell people is once a week, which is really more like once a month or never. I don't have unlimited time. So, but when something important comes up, it's like, I got to interview this guy and I got to get the video up. So I did a Falsehoods of Fitness. That's what the show is called, Falsehoods of Fitness, on carbohydrate recommendations. And like Menno said, if you're athletic, you can absorb maybe 15 to 20 grams. That's it. And anything else is unnecessary and will probably be stored as body fat. And like, that makes sense to me as a guy who has a tendency of being hypoglycemic. So I've never liked sugary stuff anyway. Because of that, like I know when I started doing the hyperplasia protocol with the X3. So what that is you want to precondition the muscles before the workout and during the workout so that the cells are more encouraged to split and become two cells. So this is the closest thing we get to permanent muscle growth. But you got to do a couple things. You got to volumize the muscle. You have to exhaust the muscle, and then you have to stretch the muscle to the point where you're in a significant amount of discomfort, not pain, right before pain, like as much discomfort as you could do before you're like, okay, this shit really hurts. So I didn't write it that way. Yeah, yeah, but I mean, it should be uncomfortable, is what I said when you're stretching. And so what you do is you exercise and you take some glucose before the workout and drink a lot of water during the workout. So you're volumizing all the tissue. So you want the tissue to be taking in the glucose and letting all the water in as well, because you're better hydrated. And then so this is, if you ever remember maybe in the 90s, people talking about bag theory, like the casing around the muscle, the fascia around the muscle is one of the limiters of growth. If you can stretch that muscle fascia out, you'll allow for cell division.
I've heard some stuff about this.
When I started doing that, I was having like 140 grams of carbohydrates, because there was a few papers that just said, you want to do, like your half your body weight plus 50 or some shit like that. I don't know. And I don't remember it because it was stupid research and it was very irresponsible. And like every day I felt horrible. Like, my hands were like this, like this is way too much. And so I just started cutting it down. I'm like, okay, this recommendation is just wrong. And so when I revise the book, I'll be using Menno's systematic analysis, because it's really showing a very low level of carbohydrates to trigger that effect. But here's the craziest thing. Of all the things that were in there, and a lot of it was not a surprise to me, because I find no performance benefit at all from higher carbohydrate day. I mean, I've run some experiments. I think people think They have like 3 Snickers bars and they go to the gym and they think, oh yeah, I'm going to just break all my records. No, you're going to do awful.
Mhm.
You're going to feel awful. It's not performance fuel at all. So here's the crazy thing he said. There is no dose response for carbohydrates and any performance increase with statistical significance.
Nice.
None. Zero. So you can have 5 grams, you can have 25 grams, you can have 50 grams. All of them do exactly the same thing. Jack shit for your performance. Now, when it comes to growth and hyperplasia, that's a different story. But at the same time, why are we so interested in something that's formerly a macronutrient that we're wondering, what is it really there for? What's it really in nature for? And not performance.
Yeah.
Zero performance benefits. I know you guys are not shocked by this at all, but generally the fitness community and even a lot of like athletes, like I've talked to head coaches of football teams that always tell their like former coach of the Chicago Bears would always yell at his players, eat as much carbs as you can. Like that's your energy. Don't show up weak.
To show up weak, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's a while ago. I mean, I talked to this guy maybe, I don't know, 10 years ago. And like I had a lot of research that I had read and on my hard drive. And I'm like, God, I really want to correct this guy, but he's a head coach. I can't say shit. So, just like,
I mean, carbo loading is a massive thing. Like, I remember growing up playing sport, be past a night before you play.
But you never do better.
No, I mean, I totally agree. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's a nothing thing. It's just,
I think also there's a tendency or a desire in the fitness community to overcomplicate things and for there to be some sort of hidden magic recipe, like you were talking about with the, I don't know, glucose before you work out and go train and half your body weight plus 50, whatever. Like people love that kind of like counting and intricacy, and there must be some secret or something magic that we can do that's going to accelerate things. And that's why I'm not getting great results. It's like get healthy and train hard and train smart and do it every day. And it'll work, right?
Well, but also, I mean, they're getting told that, training hard, the smart way to train and the right way to eat is, the wrong thing. You're eating carb. I mean, that is the traditional sort of taught knowledge that, you need to carbo load, you need to build up your glycogen base in your muscles in your liver. But, as an athlete, I always felt better when I skipped that nonsense, but B, just didn't even eat anything the night before or the day of. A game.
Oh yeah,
always
show up fasted. That's when you'll do better.
Always felt better. I always thought of it as like playing hungry. It's just like, well, I'm I want to be hungry. If like I instinctually, I need to go hunt. I need to go kill. I need to go back to primal roots. If I'm hungry,
you don't want blood flow going to your intestines when you're in the middle of a game.
Yeah, exactly.
You want to go into your quads, to your traps, to you got to perform.
Yeah.
Like what is the first thing a race car driver does when he takes his road car and puts it on the track? He shuts the AC off.
Oh yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
He doesn't want energy going into that. He doesn't want that extra belt turning, wasting power going into his AC.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
Same thing.
Yeah. So let me just backtrack. How did you get into a carnivore diet yourself? Like how long have you been doing this, and what sort of brought you over to that? Because obviously
I'm glad you asked that question. I think I have the coolest story.
Yes.
Because I mean, hey, everyone came to it from somewhere, but so I developed X3, and I had always had, ketogenic nutrition. Like I read Dan Duchesne's book, and I forgot what that was called, but Dan Duchesne's, he only wrote one book, and I'll think of the name probably in the middle of the night. But I do that. But he wrote this book that was like the most impractical information for fitness you could ever imagine. A lot of it had to do with illegal drugs. or like, like he was really big fan of the caffeine, ephedrine, and aspirin combination, which, causes cardiac arrest in some. So, I mean, like you read, and he would say that in the book. It's like, oh, it does have a chance, increased chance of cardiac arrest. And I'm just like, damn.
That's a great idea.
So I read this book right after high school, and Simon, you said it, I was probably at the age where I thought, maybe this guy's got like the secret information.
Yeah.
Because I think people do fall victim to that. And so I read this guy's book, and it was like one terrible idea after another. The last, like it was all like hyper dosages of like crazy shit. And like he says, my philosophy is use any drug you can get your hands on that'll increase performance. Like that's like the thesis of this guy's book. They're making a documentary about this guy right now. Actually, Chris Bell's making it.
That's right. Yeah, he's great.
He's a friend of mine. Great guy. Like it'll be hilarious. Everything that guy does is really funny. Bigger, Stronger, Faster was so funny. So like the last chapter of the book was ketogenic nutrition. And so I read that, and I'm like, well, that's not crazy at all. I don't even have to break a law to do that. I can just eat meat. And so I had actually been on a ketogenic diet for a long time.
Okay.
And, but it was like, I tested for ketones. Like you could get those strips you could pee on like 20 years ago. And so, I looked at the pH in my urine and kept it pretty ketogenic. But I really, other than that one chapter in that one book, and I didn't have the scientific answers already. So I really came at it through like a very open-minded manner. Like I'm going to recommend whatever nutrition, because I didn't have a nutrition program. I launched the X3 and people were like, what should we eat for the best results? This is like week number 1. Like I launched the product on the Dave Asprey podcast. And then the next week, a whole bunch of people went out and bought it. And they're asking me, what's the best nutrition program? And I'm like, well, shit, I better film something. But before I film something, I better think about what I should say, because I really don't know. So here's where I went. Like, if you look at nutrition research, or talk to nutritionists, if you talk to 10 nutritionists, you'll get 12 different answers as to what you should be doing. Because a lot of the same guys will tell you contradictory stuff. And it's like, but wait, that doesn't make sense. And they're like, yeah, it doesn't make sense to me either. But, I say both of these things. So, amazing confidence I have in you guys. So I decided to just backstep and say, like, what are the greatest drivers of long life? Like in all cause mortality studies, is there anything that has been noticed of the people who live the longest? Now, the blue zone thing is bullshit.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You know what all blue zones have in common?
Yeah.
You got no birth certificates.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, seriously. There's a study that says like all these blue zones, like the only thing they have in common, it's like there's no, nutritional anything. There's no secret route.
Wait, I'm not familiar. What's the blue zone?
Blue zone is where people live to be like well over 100 years old, like 10, 20. Yeah, they're all lying. because the study says like the only thing that connects all these areas is they didn't have birth certificates 100 years ago.
Yeah.
So nobody knows when anybody was born.
Yeah.
So they're just lying about it.
Well, and there's other problems with the blue zone studies as well. That's something that people ask me as well. But like the blue zone study was like, it's 5 zones. And they say, well, these people on average live longer than other areas and have more centenarians than other areas. And the conclusion was that this is because they have a very plant-based diet. So eating plants.
Oh, yeah. So what happened was somebody would say, I turned 120 today.
I said the agenda. Private
aircraft from Kraft Foods would land. And they'd have a dude with a briefcase of money. I mean, I don't know. This is the exact scenario.
And a video camera.
it's been pretty well shown that these guys ended up taking money from big food lobbies or companies, and they would say like, oh yeah, I eat Triscuits every day and I'm 120.
Yeah.
Like none of that's true. They never seen a Triscuit before, but they got a big check.
Yeah.
So that's really, it's been a major point of vegan fraud.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Well, it's more fraudulent than that too, because if you look at like Okinawa was one area, like most of these areas except for like Loma Linda, which is a Seventh-day Adventist group, and they religiously don't eat meat. And I think we've all sort of spoken about the history of that and why that was. It was more to suppress people's lustful feelings. That was a sin, and so they wanted to they wanted people that ate meat actually were more virile, and they were more wanted to procreate more. So like, oh, that's bad, we have to tamp that down somehow. That's healthy? No, that's not healthy. That's the opposite of that. And but the other ones, they actually, like in Okinawa, they said, oh, they eat these yams, they're really mostly plant-based. But if you actually look, they actually eat a lot of pork, and they actually eat more meat on average than the average Japanese person. So it's like, so they their own results countered their conclusions, and you see that in a lot of studies. That's why I tell people, read the study, don't just read the conclusion, because a lot of the time the conclusion is not supported by their evidence, or is completely contradicted by the evidence. I've seen that before as well. And with Loma Linda, they were saying that these people were living on average 7 years longer than the rest of people in California and America. And they're like, oh, this must be because they're vegetarian. And but if you look at Mormon populations in the same area, they have the exact same longer life expectancy of 7 years on average. And they eat whatever they want to eat, and so they don't have any religious constrictions on their diet. Well, what's a commonality there too? They don't smoke, they don't drink, they're not going around, doing drugs and partying. They're trying to live a clean life. And so, that's obviously a confounding factor, but they don't consider those. In fact, they paper over them in the Blue Zone study. So the Blue Zone studies, like I just say, is just complete and utter crap. And it's just, you cannot come to the conclusion that they did based on the information that they provided.
So back to Simon answering your question, what I wanted to find was, what are the greatest drivers of long life? And like I said, throw out the Blue Zone stuff because that was stupid. And it was conflicting. Like I wanted non-conflicting stuff. Mm-hmm. So there's only two things I found that are drivers of long life that are uncontested in research. And number one was high levels of strength and muscularity. Like some said mass, some said strength. And then the other one was low levels of body fat. Well, if you want to be as strong and as lean as possible, there's only one thing you should be eating, and that's animal protein.
No.
Just so to me, the nutrition story began and ended right there. I didn't need to read a single nutrition study to understand exactly what we should be eating, because I just took a step backwards to where like people aren't screwing with the data. Like Kraft Foods isn't funding different groups to fraudulently say that crackers and cookies are really good for you.
Yeah. We should get these from the cookie tree, back at Paleolithic era. Yeah. Well, that's cool. So how long have you been doing this now for?
About 95% strict carnivore for about 4 years.
Nice.
And then it was probably like maybe 85% carnivore before that for about 10 years.
Yeah. Nice.
So I have no complications. I have no issues. I'm not low in any vitamins. Not a deficiency, nothing.
Yeah.
And John, what does it look like for you? Like, what do you eat? Do you love eating steaks? Do you eat 2 meals a day? How does everything work for you?
So I've experimented with the 1 meal a day thing, 2 meals a day, and then going extended fasting. I'm a big fan. Like,
Yeah, you like the fasting. I've seen that.
yeah, like you can drop body, especially dry fasting.
Hmm.
Like if you try dry fasting, you'll never go back.
So no water, literally no water.
No water, no food for like multiple days. So I've done
Interesting.
72 hours. I've done that maybe 8 times. 72
Wow.
hours, no food, no water. That takes some focus.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like when you catch yourself daydreaming about a sip of water,
That's
like, wow, like how did I get here?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, but there's great research. There's a German study and a Greek study that people went 5 days, no food, no water, no complications whatsoever. They urinated the same amount every day.
I heard you say that in another podcast. That's
Mhm.
unbelievable. How can that be
Like
possible?
water. They're taking the water out of their fat cells, which is destroying their fat cells.
Mm.
So, like you can't have, unless you're a really morbidly obese person, you can't lose a pound of body fat a day. This is actually a commonly searched for thing. Can I lose a pound of body fat a day?
Okay.
Well, there's 3,000. Well,
like cramming for an exam.
Like, right. Or, somebody has, a wedding they're getting ready for, and
Yeah,
shit,
that's what
the
I mean.
wedding's 2 weeks away, and I've got 14 pounds to lose, so if I can just lose a pound a day, right? And so, like, you can't do that with calorie restriction, because there's 3,500 calories in a pound of body fat, and most people are not big enough so they can have that much of a calorie deficit. Most people's basal metabolic rate plus activity is only 2,500.
Okay.
So you can never get there. However, in the dry fasting studies, 2 of them, both of them went for 5 days. They lost more than a kilo per day.
Wow.
So yeah, like 2.5 pounds per day.
Mhm.
Now, even in that stayed even after rehydration. They actually lost more
I was
than
going to
that per
ask.
day.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then the rehydration process, your weight drops way down. Like I'll go 3 days and my body weight's down 14 pounds, but then maybe 9 of it or 8 of it come back quickly, but the rest of it, body fat, is just gone.
Yeah. How does that affect musculature as well? Are you are you losing any muscle mass as well, or dehydrating the muscles out? No.
No, and I've confirmed that with DEXA scans.
Yeah.
Losing. Now, DEXA scans are ugly because you can take a DEXA scan, drink 32 ounces of water, and it'll tell you gained a pound of muscle. So you got to keep that in mind. So when you do your baseline, you have to be absolutely dehydrated.
Right.
Okay.
And then rehydrate, then do your dry fast.
Right.
And again. So
yeah,
that's how you can really tell.
So John, at what point on a fast do you think you'd start to lose muscle? Or how do you sort of see that working? Anthony,
well,
too.
If you're truly fasting, I mean, there's people out there that are doing fasting mimicking, which is just bullshit. They're just low calorie diet. Yeah, I see these like fasting bars, and they're made out of like seeds and nuts.
Fasting bars, seriously.
Yeah, someone needs to be set on fire for that.
Another gimmick.
Well, like it's not fasting if you're eating whatever this is, and which, by the way, like the ingredients are like chocolate, caramel, nuts, seeds.
And Anthony talks about this a lot, but it just makes
like,
it makes you more hungry.
Of course, yeah, because it's glucose. You go back to glucose metabolism, you just go nuts. Like, oh my god, I need to eat something. So, true fasting keeps growth hormone really high. Now, growth hormone is not anabolic, but it is an anti-catabolic. So if you're truly fasting, you don't lose muscle. Yeah. If you try and get away with like just having half a sandwich or something, then you're going to lose muscle. Because your body's trying to find a new homeostasis at that point. It's like, oh, we're not able to get calories like we used to. So we got to adjust for this much lower number. So that's the cortisol response. And so you get rid of muscle and preserve body fat, which is why like bodybuilders who diet for shows, they are massively struggling against their own biochemistry, their own hormones. And, they lose so much muscle before a show. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, these people are impressive when they show up at their show, but they're way more impressive off season. And
Yeah.
it's because the practice of a bodybuilder's dieting before a show, with rare exception, is really not scientifically what you should be doing. Now, I'm not a bodybuilder, never claimed to be, don't really know much about it. Would never advise somebody who came to me and said, "Hey, can you help me prepare for bodybuilding show?" Like, there's so much stuff I don't know about that, like pyramid of drugs that go along with that. Don't have a clue. So um, I wouldn't advise somebody on that. But the way they diet down, like the massive calorie restriction, tiny meals, it's just misery, and they're losing muscle and
Torture.
Yeah.
Mm.
That was what Professor Ben Bickman from BYU said when I spoke to him. He said that as long as you're not like hectic and emaciated, and you're still producing ketones, like you actually can't lose muscle mass. Your body is getting that energy from the ketones that you're burning from your fat cells, and until you run out of that, you actually won't burn your musculature. So that makes sense from what you're saying, and it's funny, there are these studies talking about fasting mimicking diets, and this has similar effects to fasting as well. So now that's funny that they're now marketing this as a fasting mimicking bars and things like that. That's just and it's a bit absurd. I mean, all fasting mimicking diet is a keto diet. You're supposed to be
it's
limiting.
keto and low calorie.
Yeah. So it's like, and so a fasting mimicking bar with sugar and chocolate and stuff like that, I'm sure that's not even doing that, because
it screws up ketosis. Like, once you do that, I mean, these bars aren't like 20 calories.
Yeah.
There's a study out there somewhere that, like, in a very obscure way, mentions that if you have less than 50 calories, that it actually won't break your fast. Which, from a homeostasis perspective, it makes sense. It's not like the body's going to be like, well, we got 50 calories, so that's just what we're getting today. That's normal. Like, no, it won't do that. So like there is some overarching logic that your body applies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was going to say too, so hopping on to the X3 bar, I've been using this for a couple of weeks now, and I've just decided, because I was I bought it last year, and I was pretty sick of like the gyms getting shut down and all the different sorts of whatever. And I'm like, and I actually was looking at this when the gyms first shut down. It was like, okay, I need something in my house. Like, normally when I was in Seattle, I had a gym set up in my house, and then I was in Perth, and it was like a year later, and everything was shut down. I was pissed. I was livid, because I had like everything set up exactly the way I wanted it there, and I had no access. And so I actually looked into it at that time, and but ended up just sort of trying it out last year. But just infrequently. It wasn't something that I always did. I certainly saw that it was a difficult workout. You could actually really push yourself, and I really like that.
Hardest workout of your life.
It is. And it's
that's what Dr. Baker started saying. It's like, I've never had a hard. I mean, the guy holds like world records in the deadlift, and he says that my system is the hardest workout he's ever had. And I was like, wow, dude, really? I don't know if that's helping me out. Salesman through the roof after he said that.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people see a bar and bands, and they're like, oh, that's weak. I'm stronger than that. But then Dr. Baker's telling him, oh no, my deadlift on X3 is 750 pounds.
Yeah.
And they're like, that thing holds 750 pounds in it.
Yeah.
And I can put it in a backpack when I'm done.
Yeah.
Okay. So apparently I was confused.
Yeah.
So so they get it because of what he said. And so it was certainly not the way I thought I should ever describe it, but now I describe it like that. Yeah, it is the hardest workout you'll ever do. It allows you to train much further than weights can.
Yeah.
Because you're just going to a deeper level of fatigue, like the diminishing range. So like when I'm doing a chest press movement like this is my first repetition, I'm holding 550 pounds. So it's 550 pounds here, about 300 here, about 100 here. So I'm going through this range of motion, and it's super taxing at the top. As soon as I can't get here, well, now I'm doing shorter repetitions until I can't do that anymore. And then my last couple repetitions are just right here in the bottom. Yeah. So it fully exhausts every muscle fiber you have, which is something you can never, ever do with a weight.
Yeah. And I certainly noticed that, and pushing yourself to that extent, you get a very, very deep burn. And it's hard though, because you have to have some like mental fortitude because it hurts, so you're going and you're doing this, and you get to the point and that a lot of people do, and they're like, oh, well, that's starting to hurt. And like, oh, I think that's good enough. And the good enough guys, and then like, no, I'm going to go until, I'm bleeding out of my eyes, guys. That's really the difference. And so I've noticed that with this, I'm able to do that. And I think it is good. I used it infrequently before just because, I wasn't in the habit of using it. And I just said, all right, you know what, screw it. I'm just going to do it just 30 days, every single day. I'm just going to do it, come what may. And I started, videoing this and putting it up. And I haven't been as consistent putting them up, but I'm still videoing them, so they'll be out. But it was actually really good that I did that, because it made me like not be a little bitch.
Yeah, like you're accountable.
And so
we're all waiting for the update.
Yeah, that's it. So I'm doing this thing. I'm whatever. I'm like, oh, it's really that's killing me. And I'm like, oh, I'm on camera. And you see me sometimes look at the camera. I'm like, shit, that's there. Like, all right, let's just like keep going. I notice that like when I do that, and I really go to the point where I'm just kind of just eking out just like, half an inch sort of things at the end. It is absolutely, great workout. I really noticed that. And so, one question I did have though, obviously, you feel burnt out on the one set, but, is there an advantage to like maybe later in the day coming back, or like giving a rest and like trying to do further sets, or is that not really advantageous?
No, you really want to stimulate and then let protein synthesis happen. It's like, you got a lot of sun in Australia. How many sets do you need to do in the sunlight to get a tan?
Yeah. Hopefully one. Yeah.
Go out once, and then that's it.
Yeah.
And in fact, if you go out multiple times, you get blisters.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. You need to heal first before you go out and give it another crack.
Right. And the same thing happens to muscle. Like, you've seen micro tears in muscle, and falsely we thought that had something to do with growth. Muscle damage is inversely related to growth. So you want the muscle to be fatigued, but not damaged.
Interesting.
And it is the multiple sets and also the loading in the weaker range of motion that causes that damage. And also they noticed that marathon runners had more damaged quadriceps than people who would compete at the squat. And they're like, well, then how come they're not bigger? Well, because damage has nothing to do with growth. Inversely related. The more damage you have, the less you grow.
Okay. So you tax it to the maximum extent and then leave it alone.
24 hours?
Like all out one set with the diminishing range and the constant tension. And then when you're done, you're done. You got 48 hours before you hit that body part again. And protein synthesis is usually concluded within 36 hours.
Okay.
You just want to make sure that all the growth happens, and then you stimulate again.
So would you recommend taking that 36-hour break, or so you want to gap, so like 48 hours. So you like,
waiting 48 hours fits a lot better on a calendar than waiting 36 hours, because you don't want to have to get up in the middle of the night to do like your chest presses. So don't try and time it for 36. Also 36 was the average, so some people may be a little longer, some people may be a little shorter. So wait 48 hours, and then you can have 3 growth periods per week. Because you got to think about it. You stimulate, and then you're going to grow more than you will from a regular weightlifting day, but you get 3 of those growth periods every week because you're splitting the body 2 ways and you have 6 workouts.
Like that's Yeah, I'm certainly interested. I tried taking like my weights before, and I really should have done, like, measured, chest and everything like that. But mostly, I think it's just how I feel, and my repetitions are like steadily going up. Even on alternate days, I'm getting better. I'm feeling better. I've also noticed that something that I've seen you talk about before. Obviously, there's no sort of ab component to it, but the cores are stabilization muscles. You need those stabilization muscles.
You get your core. Yeah.
Yeah, and like so, I've definitely noticed that as well. That like it's something that you really have to have a lot of control, and so that comes a lot of the stabilization muscles in your core and elsewhere that force you to keep this under control, because it's trying to move on you, and so you have to be able to control the weight and the tension in weird angles that your body's not necessarily used to, and you have to learn that and incorporate that.
Should be, but
yeah
for some people. Well, I think also the last 20 years have given us a lot of machine training, which means we lack the stabilization firing to keep like a weight balanced over our heads. Like we need to build that back. People who are like, well, this never happens on my machine presses. Yeah, also those are like trying to get a tan with candles. Like you're not doing it. Like it's not giving you what you think it's giving you.
Yeah, definitely. And you have I have a short bar, just a normal bar as well. Is there an ab?
That's the better one.
Sorry,
that's the better one.
This is the better one.
The short one's better.
Well, it's the standard. Like it's not. Well, here it is.
Yeah.
It's 20 inches wide. The wider, so people like the wider bar because they do a wide grip like chest press, but that's like the people who do a sumo squat. They're basically just cheating while screwing up their hip joint. Sumo squat really screws up your hip joint. I think hip joint surgeries in the United Kingdom are up 700% because of what they call the CrossFit squat, which is really just a sumo squat, same sumo deadlift, same thing. So a wide grip, you have a shorter distance. If I grab out here, I only have to go maybe a foot off my chest to complete the repetition, which seems like it's easier, but it's so incorrect for joints. And hey, if you're in a competition and the competition allows things that are damaging to the body so that you can break the record or whatever, which makes me sort of question some of the rules in powerlifting. But it allows for that. So, that's that sport. So, okay. That doesn't mean it's what we should be doing. So the people who want to take a wide grip, I say, the wide grip's for your ego. It is not going to, it's going to stimulate less growth. Now so many people wanted a long bar, and hey, there were guys there's a lot of guys in the NBA that use X3 and they were just screaming for the long bar. I kind of get it with them. What's a wide grip to me would not be a wide grip for Andre Drummond, who plays for the Pistons, who is almost 7 feet tall.
Yeah, wow.
It's huge. Like, so, and it's like that bar I just showed you looks really tiny on him. But he doesn't even grab out to the ends of that bar. He kind of grabs it, more like in the middle.
So is there a proper hand placement? So when I'm doing these things, I find that my hands are actually inside my shoulders. Is that okay, or do you want it like a little wider out as well? Like that's what I was thinking.
Like for the chest press, I'm always grabbing on the, kind of on the outside of the knurling, like right here, which is about matches my shoulders. That's the most efficient place. Also, remember, to get the most involvement in the pectoral, like you want the humerus bone to come as close to the midline as possible. Well, if you're out here, that's the opposite of that. you have less pectoral involved. So a wide grip chest press is pretty much all tricep anyway.
Yeah.
So the closer your hands come together, the more squeeze you're actually getting into the pectorals. You're activating more of the pectorals.
Okay. Yeah. All right. And then for
standard bar, like I'll never be photographed using the long bar. People are like, "Oh, well, show us how to use it," and I'm like, "You make a video."
yeah.
Because it was one of those things where like people wanted it so bad, and I told them, "No, you don't want this," and they insisted, like, "No, we do. You want to listen to your customers, but you also want them to succeed."
Yeah.
And so it's like a balance. So I came out with a long bar, and there's some giant people who love it. There's some ego lifters who love it, and you know, I'll just have to pray for them later. But then there's other people who are like, "God damn it, you were right. This thing is just not as good as the original. It's great." And of course, you can get the longer bar and still grab it in the middle.
Right.
It's not like you're not allowed to do that. So, you know, but people were like, "Yeah, I got it." And like, you were right. The original was better.
Okay.
Yeah. Very cool. All right. So when people are starting out with it, with the XP3 bar, or they're trying this out, what are some, are there any sort of beginner tips or pitfalls or anything like that that people generally run up against that can be helpful to sort of
Yeah, I tell people, watch the videos. We send you a
Yeah,
link.
okay.
Watch the instructional videos. It's a very simple and elegant product, but don't just pull it out of the box and see what you can figure out on your own.
Typical men, I can imagine. Don't read the instructions. Yeah, who would do that? I would never do that.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's true of just.
So you got to actually watch the videos. Yeah,
you got to watch. And to get the best out of it, there's some people who just pull it out of the box and looked at there's like a card that shows you the pictures of, like, you know, the up and down position of a squat and stuff like that, and they'll try and figure it out from there, and they'll, you know, maybe get 85% proficient, but they'll miss some stuff that's mentioned in the video. So I tell people, like, really watch those videos. Like, and you don't need to watch them all the time because you commit them to memory. It's like probably collectively like 20 minutes of video for like the whole thing. Like everything you need to know about your exercise will be given you in 20 minutes. So take the 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Don't yes.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. All right, Anthony, have you got any more questions, or do you want to?
I think that's yeah. No, I think that's covered all of it. Yeah.
Anthony, thanks for getting up this early in the morning.
Yeah, no, that is good of Anthony. At 6 a.m. in Perth. He does it regularly.
I think our last one, either it was super late in my day or super early in my day. I don't remember which.
I think it was the other way around. Yeah, I think maybe it was sort of.
Yeah, it was a little later for you in the day, but it was like way late for me. Yeah. Well, hey, Australia and the United States do not have accommodating time.
No. Yeah. Well, I'm glad we were able to figure it out though. I don't mind getting up a bit early, and it's not a big deal. I'm up stupid early normally anyway, so that's it's good for me because I get this done before I go into work, and then I'm able, not the other side of it is, like, especially with like West Coast time, it's like midnight before anybody's really able to hop on, for me, because like midnight is like 9 a.m. on the West Coast, so midnight for me and 9 a.m. on the West Coast, so it's probably a bit easier for me to get up a bit earlier. So
John, where are you based in the States?
In California.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's a place where it's beautiful, but we pay too much in taxes for.
From what I've heard, yeah.
My God,
it's a small part. We have a
expensive place to live.
Yeah, and unfortunately, California voters don't seem to be getting any smarter because they seem to keep voting for the same people who are ruining the state, and then they complain that the state is being ruined.
Yeah, it's a bit confusing, that they you vote for policies that don't really help, and then you complain about the effects of that policy, and then you keep voting for that policy.
The same people who are writing stupid legislation, right?
human
or then
nature.
go, or then go to other states, that don't have those problems.
Californians move to other states and then screw those other states up by voting to ruin their state. And then they're like, oh, what happened?
Yeah, I've heard there's a bit of animosity in Austin and Miami about all the Californians moving in.
I was like plague rats just going around all over the place, just like bringing disease everywhere they go. And I'm from California. I grew up in Southern California. Like that is my home state, and I absolutely love it there. But it's unfortunately, it's getting more difficult to live there. For a number of reasons, and hopefully that turns around, because obviously, California is a lovely place, and then people are just trying to be people and live their lives, but it's getting much more difficult at the moment. So hopefully that turns around anyway. But John, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you taking the time. And this was really great. Hopefully we can do it again as well, and talk more shop about exercise physiology and how to get people actually fit and healthy, because that's all part of the whole paradigm, like eating right, exercising, moving your body, and just being healthy and being able to stay strong, stay healthy mentally and physically for the longest possible period as well. So I appreciate you taking the time with us.
Thanks, guys.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, John.
All right. Have a good day.
Thanks. See you guys.